I've always been reluctant with the idea of doing album reviews because I always think, well, what could I have to add to the conversation? I'm not Anthony Fantano. I'm not especially literate. At the end of the day, I enjoy talking about music, and that's all that matters, really. So I'm going to give this a go, and hopefully I'll get better if the more I do it, if I decide to keep doing it. So I'm going to be reviewing Thom Yorke's new album called Confidenza, which is a soundtrack album, which is a bit of an unusual choice to start with for album reviews, because you can't really review it like a normal album. It's a bit unfair, really. So I don't really hold this album to the same standard as, say, like Anima from a few years ago. So I guess I'm going to go slightly easy on it in that regard. Like, it's hard for me to be disappointed by this album, because I'd say this album is kind of what you would expect, you know. So the album is produced by Sam Petz Davies, who also produced the Smiles most recent album, and also Thom Yorke's last soundtrack album, Suspiria. It was released on the 26th of April, although I didn't know about it until about 2 days before, when 2 songs from the album got released. Although apparently the album's been known about since January, but I guess that just passed me by. This album has a lot of jazz on it, which is quite interesting because Thom Yorke's never done an album that's jazz focused. He's dabbled in it here and there. There's the Radiohead songs, the National Anthem, and Life in the Glass House. But it was definitely interesting to hear kind of a whole album of jazz stuff. I mean, it's not every track is like that. But before I talk about the actual tracks, I gotta say I really like the album cover, which apparently was painted by Thom Yorke. He did a good job. Okay, so most of this album is instrumental. So if you don't really care about that kind of thing, there are a couple of actual lyrical songs, which is Knife Edge and 4 Ways in Time, which are both decent tracks. I don't think they're as strong as Suspirium and Unmade from the Suspiria soundtrack, but they're okay. Knife Edge has this cool, unusual keyboard sound. It sounds almost plasticky, and the instrumental is nice. But overall, it doesn't leave much of an impact, I don't think. 4 Ways in Time I like a little bit more. I like how he sings the title. It's sort of a nice hook that lifts the song a little bit. In terms of the instrumental tracks, one of my favourites is Prize Giving, which I think was one that was released before the album dropped. I love the main line. The drum part's really cool, and there's some nice crooning from Thom, which adds to the overall atmosphere. And then it kind of goes a bit avant-garde midway through the track, which gives the track a more dynamic feel. And I also like Nosebleed, Nuptials. It's a very unusual name. There's a nice brass ensemble at the beginning, then it goes into a quiet bit, and then it goes into a cool strings bit, and then there's like an unusual outro. So it's got a great structure to it. Definitely a highlight. There's also a couple of avant-garde jazz type tracks, Bunch of Flowers and On the Ledge, which are both cool if you're in the mood for that kind of thing. On the Ledge has some cool drummer from Tom Skinner, which I forgot to mention. Tom Skinner is a part of the orchestra that's on this album, who of course is the drummer in The Smile. Some people who listen to The Smile might not be aware that Tom Skinner is actually a jazz drummer. He was in the band Sons of Kemet, which are pretty cool. I think you should check them out. The opener, The Big City, is kind of interesting. It's pretty long, it's about 8 minutes long, so I don't think it's engaging the whole way through. Pretty slow and kind of odd sounding, but it makes a nice soundscape, I'd say, which is something that Radiohead were really good at, just creating these soundscapes you can get lost in. And The Big City is a bit like that. I wouldn't say it's one of my favourite tracks, but it's pretty interesting. There's a few really short tracks. Letting Down Gently and Secret Clarinet are pretty short but sweet tracks. In the Trees is another short one, which is a more atmospheric one. And there's a Silent Scream, which is so brief you kind of forget it even happened. And then there's the title track, Confidenza, which has a nice structure to it. There's an orchestral intro, a nice ambient part. The sounds at the end remind me of like a murder scene from a horror film. So that's a pretty cool track. That's all I have to say about the tracks. It's definitely cool to see Thom Yorke explore different avenues of music. So it's definitely nice to get this album, especially as the Smile album only came out not too long ago. So it does feel like we're being spoiled as Radiohead fans. With this being a soundtrack album, obviously I think the music works better in the context of the film. Probably, I haven't seen it. So maybe I'll end up watching it just to see what the context of the music is. It'll probably be more impactful with the film. I probably won't really listen to the album on its own ever again. Well, yeah, I don't intend to go back to it much, which is kind of how I felt about the Suspiria soundtrack.
Obviously, Suspirium and Unmade are fantastic songs, but the album overall I don't really listen to. So I'm going to give the album a 6 out of 10. I like it, but I'm probably not really going to go back to it. And the highlights for me are Prize Giving and Nosebleed Nuptials. So thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.